Dr. Melinda Pierson, and I chair the Department of Special Education. Today, we are going to be talking about behavioral response to intervention, supporting and nurturing essential life skills. So I have been at Cal State Fullerton since 2001 and a department chair since 2007. I was at Cal Poly Pomona for 3 years prior to that as an assistant professor. I have 3 areas of research that I focus on: teacher training, which is part of what we're doing today; affective characteristics, affective characteristics, such as social skills, self-concept, and loneliness, especially in adolescents with mild, moderate disabilities. So that's also going to be addressed today, as well as evidence-based best practices in literacy. So those are my 3 areas of research. Before that time, I taught for 8 years in 2 school districts, and I've worked consistently in schools since 1990, being a consultant. So I've done a lot of professional development with districts before school starts in August, supporting teachers, supporting my students and interns for all these years, and conducting a lot of research. I have 4 kids, 3 of whom are my biological children, and 1 is my host daughter from Rwanda, who is just like a daughter to me. My older 2 are out of state. One's at grad school at Xavier in Cincinnati, and 1 is in Oregon, just starting his freshman year. My host daughter is in Santa Barbara at college, and my 9th grade daughter is at home with me. And I've also had 15 foster kids in and out of my home, which all of my kids, 19 of them, if you want to count it that way, have been my own personal guinea pigs and research for what we're talking about today, but also all of the behavioral training and work that I've done in schools. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about this topic, although I wish we were close together and able to get each other's perspectives. So our focus is on the fact that behavior is a form of communication, providing clues about what is missing in a young person's life. So which behavioral skills are we talking about? Many now recognize that behavioral skills are just as important and possibly more important than academic skills, which is what we mostly focus on. Student mastery of all of these skills better predicts success in school, college, and life than test scores do, or than measures of intellectual ability. So behavioral skills, social skills, and the ability to have good relationships with people matter more than academic skills. So as educators, we have to learn how to support our students with behavioral skills. But how are we really going to do that? We need to focus on non-cognitive skills, self-regulation like self-control, executive functioning, social emotional learning. So another way to say it is grit, self-control, and social intelligence. So I was at a seminar a couple of years ago, and the presenter was talking about 8 different social skills that were really important for people to have to succeed in life. And he kept saying grit, grit. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean resilience, perseverance, the ability to be self-aware and stick it out, even despite our shortcomings in really tough scenarios? So grit is something that we're going to try to help our kids develop: self-control and social intelligence. Okay, so the 6 steps of behavioral response to intervention are to identify the most critical behavioral skills. And then once we identify what those skills are that we really, really want our students to have to be successful in life, those essential life skills, we want to define those skills and then make sense of those skills. Then as teachers, we're modeling those skills in our daily lives and how we interact with people around us, how we talk to kids, how we talk to our colleagues, how we roll our eyes at different scenarios, whatever your behaviors might be. So we're models, we're teaching them, and then once we teach them, we're helping them to sustain those skills. We're nurturing those skills. So we are going to measure student success in displaying these specific skills. And then we can provide differentiated supports that respect students' current levels of readiness. So we know that some people are better than others at certain skills. I see that within my own kids in my own home. And you probably do too with your own children, cousins, friends' kids, all of that, kids in your own classroom. So we're going to intervene appropriately and necessary when we see evidence that reveals we need to do that. We're going to step in and we're going to help behaviors improve. So these steps will predict and prevent frustration instead of reacting to behavioral deficits. We don't want to react. We want to be proactive, and we want to be very reflective and predict and prevent. So our goal is to combine response to intervention and positive behavior supports. So we know for sure that different students have different behavioral needs. Students have different beliefs about their ability to learn. Some people have a lot of self-confidence and others have none, and they don't think they can do it at all. And maybe that's because of their background and not having the success that others have had. We know that their levels of engagement are different, motivation, their attractiveness to school and academic subjects, and their feelings of belonging. All of these things influence how they act. So, which behaviors are the most critical to success in a classroom? So this is from some research that shows 6 interrelated research-based framework of these categories of behavior, Farrington from 2012. So precognitive self-regulation, social skills, perseverance, mindsets, learning strategies, and academic behaviors. And all of these fit together to really create success in positive behavior responses. So, what is precognitive self-regulation? So students may have difficulty coping emotionally. This is going to be common in our trauma-based society with lots of at-risk students. We have had a severe pandemic going on where there has been a lot of trauma for our students. They have had to be home longer. There has been more abuse and more mental health issues. There has also been issues with nutrition and poor health during this time. Also sleep, lack of exercise, or being too sensitive to the world around us or sensory inputs, and then the ability to be able to process those inputs. So these abilities on how to handle all of this are depending on and related to the physiological and safety needs as defined within Maslow's 5-tiered theory of motivation. So that's a really key theory that we've studied for years in education. And it really looks at the fact that students can attain, maintain, regulate, and change their level of arousal for a task or a situation. So let's look at mindsets. Students feel a sense of belonging, belief, and engagement. That's their mindset. If they feel those things, they can believe in themselves, they're engaged in the activity or in school, and they feel like they belong because the teacher has made an effort to make an intentional effort for a relationship. So a positive growth mindset is as follows. I belong in this academic setting, or I belong in this classroom. It's not too hard for me. This is where I fit. And this is the connection to the school environment. I get stronger with effort. So being smart is something you become, not something you are. Or I can succeed at this. So you're nudging students towards greater levels of proficiency. And students are then drawing on their self-efficacy to persist in learning. So they believe in themselves enough, and you've proven that you believe in them, that they're going to persist and they're going to persevere. This work is important to me. Students have a purpose for learning and they receive personalized supports and opportunities for personalized paths. Okay, social skills. Students have respectful interactions with others. They demonstrate respect for themselves. Educators observe students cooperating and collaborating in socially appropriate ways. Educators observe students behaving with empathy for others in both academic and social circumstances. And then what are those key social skills for success in school? Actually, there is another webinar that I just recorded that's on friendship skills and what those key skills are that are necessary for friendship success in school. And some of those are being polite, being kind, asking questions of others, like showing interest in a friend, not just talking all about yourself, but actually having genuine curiosity about how your friend is doing. Knowing how to get into a group without being pushy, sharing items like school supplies, snacks, or supporting others with classwork. And then learning strategies. So students can regulate, monitor, and reflect on their learning. Students are also using effective study and organizational skills. They're behaving metacognitively. That means they're being aware of their thinking and their behaviors and what's going on around them. They're thinking about how they're learning. So they're tracking their own progress and they're responding appropriately when they're faced with a task. So learning strategies are thought of as cognitive self-regulation. So students regulate the level of their learning frequently and they make adjustments as necessary. So perseverance. Students maintain the effort and they adapt to setbacks. Students exercise self-discipline and self-control. Daily gratification. So delay gratification. So that not everything gets handed to them at that moment. They're able to actually do a task without having a reward immediately following the task completion. They advocate for one's needs and they stick to a task. They don't just quit quickly. That's because they're drawing on positive mindsets, social skills, and learning strategies. Academic behaviors. So students are physically, emotionally, and cognitively present and attentive within learning and the learning environments. Educators note that students consistently complete tasks of high quality. Educators observe that they actively participate in learning. Students appear motivated to learn, succeed, and grow. Again, this depends on a positive mindset, social skills, learning strategies, and perseverance. So you can see how it all fits together, this interrelated behavioral categories. So what are some social behaviors as well as their opposites? So cooperation, the opposite is disruption. Social respect, the opposite is defiance. Physical respect, aggression. Verbal respect, the opposite is inappropriate language. Attention, inattention. Self-control, impulsivity. Attendance, not being there, having absences. Honesty, opposite is lying, cheating, or stealing. And having empathy for someone, the opposite would be harassment or bullying. And then academic behaviors and their opposites. So metacognitive practices, thinking about your thinking, right? Opposite, unreflective learning. Having a growth mindset and positive self-concept, a fixed mindset and negative self-talk. Self-monitoring and an internal locus of control, an external loci of control. So they're actually aware that they can control the situation many times. Engagement and motivation, the opposite is apathy. Strategy creation and use would be passive learning or learned helplessness. They don't get involved and they don't use their learning strategies to improve their learning. volition and perseverance that learned helplessness, resilience, emotional fragility. So focusing on tier 1 would be clearly defining the behavioral expectations for students within all environments of the school. So usually schools have a pretty good behavior plan that is set up for every single person at the school. People at the school, teachers, the noon aides, paraeducators, administrators, parents even, are consistently and explicitly modeling and teaching the behaviors that we want to see and hear from all students. The behavioral instruction is integrated into the academics. Evidence is gathered about the extent to which all of the students are meeting these behavioral expectations. And then that timely evidence regarding students who are not adequately meeting the demands of the entire school. So those just basic behavioral expectations are not being met by a very small percentage of students. So how do educators prepare to teach these behavioral skills? They learn how to read, reframe, and redefine student behaviors. We have to assume that every single student has the capacity to change. We are teaching, modeling, and nurturing appropriate behaviors as a preventative endeavor. We're helping students recognize stressors and how to avoid them. We're guiding students to master the steps involved in self-awareness. We're ameliorating causes of high stress within schools, in neighborhoods and homes, and in collaboration with community partners. Many times this is what the school's community liaison is working on. And we're reframing misbehaviors as stress behaviors. So we want to address those stressors in our students' lives. So let's look at tier 1 instruction. So explicit instruction, what does that mean? That means that the staff at the school teach, model, they authentically practice and reinforce the behaviors that they want to see all of the students exhibit. This explicit instruction is really a critical component of tier 1 instruction, academically and behaviorally. Teachers will provide clear guidance on what behavioral skills mean and what it looks like to display them. Metacognitive modeling. So the staff at the school demonstrate what appropriate behaviors look like and sound like, thinking aloud and allowing students to observe how successful individuals navigate and negotiate social and functional environments. Think alouds are a powerful and underused strategy. In thinking aloud in relation to behavioral skill instruction, teachers may talk through with students how they plan for the work needed to prepare for a lesson. And this would serve as an effective model of an important learning strategy skill that students must put into practice when completing homework and studying for tests. Scenario-based applications. So staff and students at the school engage in interactive explorations of scenarios in which appropriate behaviors must be put into action. Staff and students can collectively problem solve, brainstorm ideas, consider options, check the viability of solutions, and describe the why behind an agreed on answer. So teachers may reference a situation from the preceding day or week in which difficulties with behavioral skills led to challenges. For example, perhaps during a specific lesson, maybe in a social studies class, teams of students did not display the appropriate respect, cooperation, or empathy. And this scenario could be presented to the class, and students would reflect on what occurred and problem solve on what should have happened. Okay, problem solving. So students and staff at the school would apply the same problem solving processes that they use when applying their academic learning for academic performance tasks to behavioral situations. Perhaps the performance task for a behavior mini lesson relates to a student who's having difficulty in science. Teams of students could problem solve how the student could apply the skills of perseverance, adaptation, and self-advocacy to address difficulties, with the result of each student group producing an action plan that could be used. Student-constructed learning. Voice and choice are critical to increasing relevance and engagement. Staff can assign students to choose a behavioral category or skill that represents a need or interest for each of them. Students can then describe a situation in which these skills are important, either within school or outside of school, then identify how these skills would be employed, concluding with an example of how they would support a friend in such a situation. Social and collaborative learning. Collaboration among students and student communication of learning are really, really important. Learning is inherently a social process. Blending individual explorations of behavioral skills with group work, just as we should with academic learning, is absolutely vital. Small group and individual practice are really important as well. So the staff at the school can present challenges to small groups and individuals, asking them to communicate their thinking and produce their answers in various forms, orally, in writing, on video, whatever, through live demonstrations, visually, graphically. Study examples. So staff and students analyze positive and appropriate answers to behavioral scenarios, reflecting on why the solution is successful and considering other positive alternatives. A key strategy when engaged in academic learning is studying examples, such as a well-written essay, to draw conclusions on how to improve one's own writing. This strategy can be applied to behavior as well. So students can analyze an adult or a student who employed, for example, effective self-regulation, self-control, self-reflection, or self-monitoring habits. The outcome of this study could be a commitment to using one related skill in the coming week. That's really important that we keep up that maintenance of that skill. So study non-examples. Staff and students analyze inappropriate responses to behavioral situations, dissecting errors and generating answers that would result in better outcomes. This strategy, of course, is closely related to the study of examples, except in this scenario, students are dissecting a non-example, describing what happened and then what should have happened. Again, this strategy is regularly employed in academics, such as when a student is asked to explain the error made in a classmate's math solution before correcting the error and solving the problem. It's just the same for behavior. Application. So students apply behaviors and non-cognitive skills to the tasks, projects, and learning situations that collectively represent the work they do in school. These assignments can serve as culminating projects in which the students draw on several weeks of behavioral learning to solve an open-ended problem, as is done in academics. So a prompt could be, a student's family has moved to a new city and she's about to attend a new middle school. What behavioral skills and habits should she use to make sure she makes a successful transition? Let's refer back to specific skills that we've discussed in class and provide at least 3 specific steps that this student should take. And then finally, checking for understanding and immediate specific corrective feedback. Staff and other students provide feedback on the processes that led to answers. So students also self-assess their answers against a scoring guide that's been co-created and explained and engaged in frequent, if not continual, revision and improvement of solutions. As with academic learning, assessment has the power to inform learning and can even serve as learning. So ask students to reflect on one behavior that they could have done better within the previous week, and then give them time to share their responses with a partner, a safe partner. Encourage the partner to ask what the student would do differently and to respectfully suggest a strategy that's worked for him or her or a friend. And then finding time for instruction. So the first 6 weeks of school, is a really important time where positive learning environments with students, such as clear expectations, those procedures and routines that are daily, and positive relationships between staff and students really are important. So the depth of learning is more critical actually than the coverage of content. So we really want to make sure that this is a time to acknowledge that instruction needs to be front-loaded on critically important behavioral skills and relationship building. So teachers that I've worked with have found that after implementing this revision, that learning of all kinds has been so much more productive for the entire school year. So what about classroom meetings or mini lessons? So set aside 10 to 20 minutes on a regular basis, even if it's once a week, twice a week, or even daily would be better, but have students engage in mini lessons on behaviors and non-cognitive factors that the school prioritizes. So using strategies that would help solve some of these problems. So you might want to set the tone for learning, making sure that students know that they're establishing trust and building relationships. Students are being motivated to feel significant and competent. Students are creating empathy and encouraging collaboration. They're supporting the integration of social, emotional, non-cognitive, and academic learning. They're practicing metacognitive modeling, examining scenarios, studying examples and non-examples. They're practicing skills, checking for understanding, and providing immediate, specific corrective feedback. What's a behavioral preview? So prior to beginning an academic content lesson, you always are needing to remind students of the behavior expectations for that particular lesson. What do you want them to focus on? So this is going to be outlined, of course, in the school's behavior plan, but make sure that students know specific behaviors they must demonstrate when working on an academic lesson. You can even have teams of students generate a list of 2 behaviors that they should definitely not see and 2 behaviors that they should see during this next period of teaching and learning. And students can share with one another what those skills are. And then a review is obvious. So you're asking them to review how that lesson went behaviorally, which less than appropriate behaviors were observed, and also which appropriate behaviors. And of course you want to be anonymous with the behaviors that were negative. But you could have students talk about the specific behaviors, how that situation could be revisited, and how that behavior during subsequent class meetings could be different. Multi-class meetings is another example of finding the time to instruct students on behaviors. This can be with 2 classes put together, entire grade levels, or the entire school, sometimes an assembly or a pep rally, where the consistency of explanations and understandings of behavioral expectations are explained and what must be displayed in classrooms and non-classroom environments across the campus. And then within academic tasks. So explicitly modeling and reinforcing behavioral skills during the completion of those academic tasks enhances behaviors, engagement, and motivation. And this is going to require that a positive learning environment, healthy relationships, positive beliefs, and clear expectations do exist. So that's going to be really important as you go along. Okay, let's talk about questions to ask when designing behavioral interventions at tiers 2 or 3. So these are obviously students who are most at risk or likely to have a significant deficit in behavioral skills. Why do you think that of that student? And what is the most immediate area of need? So that we can provide positive and differentiated supports within core classrooms, and so that we can provide targeted, immediate, and intensive tier 3 supports. We really want to start with tier 2 supports, which should be informed on a regular basis for our students. Who's going to provide these supports, which staff members are available, and who has the professional development that they would have to be able to administer these extra supports for students that have been struggling. So some schools have an RTI team, a response to intervention team. And if so, that team could also work on behavioral supports and not only academics. So behavioral supports, of course, I've already said, are distinct from the academic supports because academic supports are specific to a content area usually and can be practiced in small groups. But behavioral supports occur within all environments, in classrooms, non-classrooms, and across the whole school. So it's really best to provide and practice behavioral supports within normal teaching and learning environments. So all staff really should be trained on how to provide these supports. And that way processes need to be in place to prepare, empower, and support educators in supporting students' behavioral needs. When will educators provide the supports? So Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavioral supports will likely occur throughout the entire day within all environments. So behaviors can best be practiced within the actual authentic educational environments in which they're necessary and within which they have not yet been successfully demonstrated. Educators need to establish preparations and systems to support both the staff who are assisting students with supplemental needs and the students receiving this help. So there may be times during which small group supports, particularly at Tier 3, your most severe behaviors, are appropriate. And one time may be when behavioral intervention programs are necessary and they're provided to groups of students with similar needs. So what supports or specific resources or programs will best meet students' behavioral needs? The best intervention is a targeted intervention. And we know that students behave and misbehave for a reason. We need to look at the causes, the antecedents, and functions that underlie the behavior. So what happens right before the behavior, what happens during the behavior, and what happens after the behavior? What are all of those reinforcers? How will we provide those supports? So the relationship that we have with all students, and in this case are really our most vulnerable students, makes the difference between success and frustration. And I just did a webinar that I just recorded on intentional relationships, and that really fits here because we can provide supports with a combination of intensity, compassion, because we've already shown the students that we care, urgency, our belief in them and their ability to change, belief in ourselves that we know what we're doing and how to handle this situation, and patient persistence. So success really is inevitable and behavioral challenges can successfully improve. How are we going to, oops, I already said that, I'm so sorry. Okay, how will we frequently monitor student response to this support and make the necessary adjustments? So there really needs to be a team. Teams make decisions and develop plans that meet the students' needs and also the staff capacities. So when monitoring the progress of a student receiving Tier 3 supports in the area, let's say of reading, 1 to 2 weeks is a frequency that's been used. And it's both feasible to sustain and frequent enough to respond to information in a timely manner. We typically can gather evidence of progress in response to Tier 2 and 3 behavioral supports on a daily basis, but really it should be gathered daily and analyzed weekly. So when will our RTI team, so leadership team, your student study team, problem solving team, how often will they meet to analyze data, examine or re-examine student needs, ensure students are adequately progressing, and make the adjustments necessary to guarantee that this occurs? Are we meeting at least every 2 weeks? That's really important. So teams have to make these decisions for themselves and develop the plans that meet student needs and staff capacities. I really think that once a month is too long. It really should be every 2 weeks if possible. There's too much time that's passed in 4 to 6 weeks. 2 weeks seems to strike the right balance when I've worked with different teams. So teams are empowered to make timely adjustments, and the amount of time that they meet will likely not be much longer than if they meet more frequently. So bi-weekly meetings can be shorter than monthly meetings, which will be shorter than meetings that occur every 6 weeks. So they can meet for shorter periods of time. And what evidence do we have that we're not only doing the interventions, but that they're working to improve student outcomes? So whenever a new student improvement effort is initiated, we really need to ask how we will know if our work is resulting in improvements in student outcomes. Specifically, what will improve as a result of increases in students' behavioral skills. So if a specific student is at risk for mindset, social skills, learning strategies, perseverance, or academic behaviors, how can we really determine that those outcomes will indicate improvement? So we really have to identify what those outcomes are that we're looking for. So what gets measured, so which outcomes we're measuring, that's what gets done. So we have to measure the effectiveness of efforts, and it motivates and sustains the efforts of both the students and the staff. So let's talk about tools. How are we going to do this? I'm going to give you a free website that's listed here at the bottom. That is go.solutiontree.com/RTI. And you can see that there's a whole lot of templates listed there that are amazingly helpful for your behavioral response to intervention at Tier 2 and also Tier 3 levels. So there are templates to determine students in need, as well as what the behavioral needs are, and then observational checklists to determine how students are struggling, and then assigning those appropriate supports. Observational checklist for attending, completing, and participating, as well as regulating, reflecting, and monitoring. There's a template to help staff support the development of student behavioral skills. There's a whole lot more there. I encourage you to visit that website because you will get a lot of really good information and lots of templates that you can print off or download and use for your classrooms. Here are some great programs for more severe support, and this would be for behavioral interventionists. This would be for special day class teachers. Aggression replacement training. There's also cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools, obviously kids that have gone through trauma. First Step Next is for pro-social skill development. A social and emotional competency checklist and curriculum is by the Incredible Years. And then Check and Connect for engagement, motivation, apathy, lesson plans, and ideas. So these are really some great programs that I've seen used in schools, that I've used in schools, that I've used with teachers. So check them out, and also Google some Tier 3 supports for behavior if you are in that place where you really need some more critical behavior intervention strategies. And then final words as we're navigating the challenges of behavioral response to intervention and considering how in the world do we implement this. You need to look at your school culture. Is your principal on board? Do you have admin? Do you have staff support so that you're able to move forward with school-wide implementation? Are you willing to do some parent trainings and get parents on board? Who has the time? Which staff can do it? And what resources are available to really get this behavioral plan down and set for your students at the school? Who knows how to do data collection, that management and analysis? Who's going to keep that organized? And you can use the templates that I referred to on the two previous slides before. And then beliefs and expectations. How much do you believe in behavior? How much do you believe that behavior actually heavily influences the academic skills success in a classroom? How important is it to you and to your staff? And then, do you believe that we really need to teach all students? How inclusive is our thinking? How much do we love all students and own them all? This is not just for a special ed teacher. This is for all teachers, all kids. So How much do you believe in your purpose of being a teacher who cares and who wants to shape behavior so that academic skills can improve? Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. I wish you great luck. I challenge you to definitely go on the websites that I shared. I challenge you to choose a goal, to choose an area that you want to improve on, and write that goal down. Find an accountability partner at your school and work on that behavior goal, on how you're going to help your students improve their behavioral strategies in class. Have a great day, and thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you did. Take care.